Chapter 17. The Huttons Travel to Michigan. November 1955. Several years have passed since Ralph left his country, and he has not seen his parents again. It is time to visit them. He surprises Emma and brings her Panagra airline tickets as a gift. We're going to Michigan so my parents can meet you and the kids. We will have a real American Christmas with snow and cold weather. The kids will have fun in the woods around the house, skiing and snowboarding. Ralph can't wait to tell the little ones the news. After lunch, he waited for them and said, "Guess what? We're going on an airplane to the USA. You're going to meet your grandparents." "Wow, Daddy!" Jim jumped with excitement. "Let me show you on the globe trip that we will make," said Ralph. Jim approached the world map while his father traced with his fingers the route they would take from Chile to the United States. Behind them, Brian looked confused. For them and their mother, flying was going to be a new and exciting experience. Emma is very excited when, at last, the dream day of boarding arrives. After almost 24 hours of flying, stopovers, and connections, they arrive at their destination. The grandparents greet them with great joy. They are very happy with their grandchildren because they master the language perfectly and can communicate well. They are also surprised to meet Emma, as they expected to meet an indigenous woman with dark skin and black hair. However, she, being Chilean, has the countenance of a Nordic, just like her children. Ralph, for his part, is happy to be back in the country and wants to show Emma everything. He takes her to the supermarket, and she is impressed by the variety of items lining the shelves, aisle after aisle. It's the first time she's seen so much food in so many different forms: canned, frozen, dehydrated, and fresh, all under one roof. As they browse the shelves, Ralph tosses all his favorite cravings into the cart that he hasn't eaten since he's been away from home. Cornflakes, to be eaten with fresh milk at breakfast, peanut butter, which is spread on pre-cut rolls in perfect squares for snacking, the much-famed ketchup, a sweet red sauce made from tomatoes, but not tasting like tomatoes, which is eaten with sausage, hamburgers, and fries, and M&Ms, those small chocolate peels covered in thin, sugary, brightly colored, crunchy coating. Everything is new to Emma and the children, who, after trying these curious products, quickly incorporated them into their daily diet. Emma also admires the eye-catching packaging of each product, delighted with how easy it is to prepare food in the United States. Some neighbors, who were Ralph's childhood friends, hear about his day and invite him and his wife and children over to reminisce and hear about his adventures in Chile. Jim and Brian make new friends with their children and spend a great few days playing together. Hazel, the grandmother, is happy to have her son at home and goes to great lengths to cook his favorite dishes, especially chicken pie, which Emma learns to prepare to please him. In the afternoons, Hazel would sit down to play the harpsichord, an ancient instrument that was later replaced by the piano. The children would dance to the music, and their grandfather would encourage them, applauding their antics. Ralph's mother was a very fine and talented craftswoman. She embroidered and wove beautiful rugs of silk and wool, as well as traditional needlepoint. Ralph's father was a well-known journalist and classical music critic who had a column in the acclaimed Kalamazoo Gazette. Ralph's parents were collectors of antiques, which would be admired throughout the house. The display cases were filled with humble china children and Hazel's favorite, dressed in ladies and dancers. A few ivory pieces also stood out, meticulously carved with ancestral motifs characteristic of this art. In the dining room hung a multicolored Tiffany-style chandelier with embossed fruit designs. These treasures and many more were acquired on their pleasure trips around the world. In the last few weeks, Ralph tells Emma that the mining company will pay for the transportation of everything the family needs to take to Chile. So she takes advantage of this generous opportunity and buys different modern appliances that she could use in the American camp without electrical problems. She bought a refrigerator, washing machine, dryer, steam iron, and lamps, among others. She also packed Crates and crates full of sheets, table linen, towels, pots and pans, crockery, cutlery, and everything for the house. She did not skimp on clothes and shoes for herself, toys, sports equipment, books and tools for Ralph and the children, not to mention the edible treats her children had grown accustomed to. After this unforgettable vacation, Ralph's parents were again lonely and sad, but promised that they would visit them in the future. Back in Chile, Emma's friends would take turns to visit her and look at the gringo novelties that, in those years, were very difficult to find in Chilean homes. Among other memories, I can't fail to mention that Emma was one of the first hosts to celebrate Halloween. She would bring decorations and treats for the party. Months before, she would start making costumes for the children, who would dress up as cowboys, Native Americans, ghosts, and witches. Another of the holidays that Emma incorporated as a family custom was Thanksgiving, the very American day for thanking all the good things they have, being the most important for the Huttons and the relatives. Thus, every 2 years they repeated this vacation, which could be either in the United States or in Europe. Emma felt more than privileged to have found Ralph. He was the ideal man, attractive, affectionate, and gave her everything she had never dreamed of. Over the years, the family grew, and the grandparents traveled to Chile to meet their new granddaughter. They had planned to stay at least 6 months, so they brought everything they needed to be comfortable in the house they were going to rent. Ralph hired them a Victoria, which is a typical carriage of some parts of the country, to travel around Rancagua. The coachman usually picked them up in the afternoons, after Jim got out of school, since he served as their guide and interpreter. The grandmother, terrified and annoyed by the coachman's roughhousing of the horses, orders her grandson to tell the man that if he stops mistreating the animals, she will pay him double. Jim smiles and communicates the message to the coachman, who frowns, not understanding what the old woman is asking. Nevertheless, he agrees to her demands, motivated by her offer. The change had been too abrupt for them in terms of costumes and lifestyle in this country. As a result, their stay was considerably shortened, and unlike how they had arrived, they now packed just enough to return home. Chapter 18. Tom's Great Friend. Viña del Mar, 1955. It was like living in paradise. The house where Tom was waiting for us was big and comfortable. The schools were a few steps away, and in those days, children could walk there. Rosalinda set up her clinic again and built up a good clientele. We lacked nothing. But this city offered many temptations for Tom, who was fascinated by glamorous nights. On weekends, he would dress up in a suit and tie and go to the casino to try his luck, as he put it. He would arrive in the wee hours of the morning, drunk, swaying, and bitter because Mr. Escudero, the casino manager, had taken everything. He consoled himself by saying, "Next time it will be better." Whenever he lost or had a failure, he would say, "Try again." It was his motto, and he repeated, "Try again always." Also on Sundays, he tried his luck at the sporting club, betting on a horse. There he would meet his close friend, Eugenio Vial. They both limped on the same leg. They would spend their time betting on one race after another until they were left without a dime. They would return to our house in the afternoon to close the day talking about their favorite subject, the history of Chile. Their favorite patriots were the Carrera family and General Ramon Freire, Don Eugenio's great-grandfather. They detested O'Higgins, whom they always called a treacherous guacho. When they finished talking about Chile, they started with Europe. They admired Rommel and Patton, and sometimes in those reviews of history, they even went as far as Napoleon. It was a delight for me to sit and listen to these after-dinner gatherings. Don Eugenio was a gentleman who passed through my life and stayed forever. He had an imposing figure, with his 1.90 m height, slim and elegant. He wore Prince of Wales suits, shirts with his embroidered monogram, Bostonian shoes, and in winter, a camel coat. He had been educated at an English university, being one of those people who exuded class and distinction. I will always remember him fondly for the affection he had for my father and for us. Every time he visited us, he would bring us chocolates and 24 white chrysanthemums for Rosalinda, telling me, "My pretty one, here, they are for your mother." I loved to put them in a porcelain vase that had been a wedding gift for my parents. This friendship lasted for a long time until Mr. Vial passed away, some years before Tom. Chapter 19. Adolescence in Rancagua. Our stay in Viña was not for many years because, once again, the same pattern was repeated. Tom left his job after a short period of time and went to look for new experiences. This time, he went to El Toro, a hydroelectric plant located in the Biobío region, where he worked for a while as a construction supervisor. My mother, finding herself alone with us again, decided to return to Rancagua with my grandmother and told us, "This time I have brought the house for my mother, and we will live there forever." The change was not so bad, as we were reunited with our cousins. The house was big, with 6 bedrooms, one for each of us, and even a special room for Tom to stay in when he came back with his books and radio. There, he would listen to Julitos Martinez's sports commentary and the soccer games of his Cato, as he called his favorite Catholic university team. Rosalinda got a full-time job at the National Health Service and set up her clinic again, where she worked overtime in the afternoons after the hospital. She also enrolled in the Red Cross, graduating as a nurse, where she worked for years as a nurse and as a dentist for the poor. When she set up her practice at home, I acted as her secretary. I passed her clients to the waiting room and took great care to keep it spotless before she arrived. I also boiled her instruments in the sterilizer. I knew the name of each instrument, such as the forceps, tweezers, the contra-angle handpiece, the piece where the burrs were inserted to polish the teeth, the mirror, and everything she asked me for. I memorized the procedures she used in her work, being, in practice, her dental assistant. Generally, the clientele was the one she had met and treated in Coya years before, and when they found out about her new practice in Rancagua, they sought her out. When someone did not have the money to pay, she still treated and people rewarded her with sacks of beans, potatoes, fruits, and even chickens, which they brought alive to the practice. She also attended many children of rich people, Rotarians and Lions, who sent them in their name to have their teeth checked or to have a tooth pulled, promising that their parents would come over to pay later, which almost never happened. She, however, never left anyone unattended or in pain. Another job I developed from the age of 14 was that of a merchant, with a woman who bought used clothes and knickknacks from me. I would empty my closet and look for whatever I thought was saleable for my transactions, which I carried out in the backyard during the hours that my mother was working at the hospital. The buyer was a widow and had a bunch of kids. Everything was good for her. She had an eagle eye, which she would always spot some item in the hallway that I had overlooked and offered to buy it. I would think about it for a second while she pulled out the bills and showed them me to tempt me. Always the transaction would go through and left both of us happy. She with her big purchase and me with my wallet full. "See you next month," she would say to me as she said goodbye. With that money, I bought fabrics and made my own original clothes. Without realizing it, I feel that this woman awakened my commercial talent. When I turned 16, I worked in the office of some friends of my sister's acquaintance, answering the phone and taking messages. I felt like a real secretary. That's how I learned to earn my money and manage it according to my needs. That made me feel self-sufficient. Day by day, I was alert to incorporate new skills, such as decorating, cooking, sewing, without imagining that these small trades, over the years, were going to be fundamental tools for my future businesses. As Rosalinda went about her routine, September arrived. this season of spring and festivities. I love that time of year. I would spend it in the yard, watching the hummingbirds flying from branch to branch, the yellow rushes beginning to sprout, and the violets spreading their perfume. I would cut a small bouquet and place it in a glass vase on the living room table. I would do it with illusion in case a prince came to visit me and the place smelled good. Undoubtedly, those were my moments to dream. Tom, who no longer lived at home but visited us daily, was busy watering the trees and making room on the soil for them so the water wouldn't run off. "We'll have a good crop of apricots," he said. "I'll make you some delicious jam." I smiled because he made indeed delicious jam. I looked under the lemon tree and see his worn canvas chair, a book on it, and a piece of wood. The aluminium milk jug with infusions of medicinal herbs, mint, pico, cedrón, plants that he grew and used in his detoxification periods because, according to him, they clean his liver. He has been in abstinence for a month. I hope it lasts until the 18th, I thought, because I would like to invite some of my friends or cousins to spend the holidays. It depends on what the mood is like. Tom usually goes out on a bender around that time to go visit some friends, as he calls them. He has them all over the place, from north to south and east to west. We never know where he goes until he comes back, and I ask him, "Where did you go? What did you do?" "I had a wonderful time," he answered. "I went to visit Miss Rosita, a distinguished lady who treated me like a great gentleman. She even put me up in her room in a bed with thread-count sheets." He always invented a story. My mother looked at him with the desire to kill him, and on the other hand, I listened to him attentively with unusual innocence. I imagined Rosita hearing the same stories he told us. I thought, poor lady, she must be so lonely that Tom entertains her and makes her day more pleasant. We never knew those characters or those places where he stayed. I remember a morning in September 15th when my sister Deborah was arranging her purse because she was going to Santiago, to Tom's sister's house. My Aunt Esmeralda inherited that name from her grandmother Esmeralda Cuellar. Tom told me that, when they were little, their Uncle Federico, who was actually their grandfather, would arrive in his Ford A and take them to Miss Esmeralda's house, a very fine lady, who received them with affection. The children would listen to her play the piano, and then she would give them each a piece of candy, and they would say goodbye until the next time. Then, none of them suspected that that distinguished lady was their grandmother, because although grandfather never married her and was raised by his half-sister, in fact, Bob, my father's father, was the son of that Miss Esmeralda. My aunt had 3 daughters, my cousins, with whom Deborah got along wonderfully and shared long periods of time. They gave her fine clothes, paid for her hairdressers, and went to the movies. They were all blue-eyed blondes, raised like queens, because even the bills their father, Mr. Weiser, gave them were new and used, so that the little girl's hands would not get dirty. Although I did not participate in those meetings, because I was a minor, I am glad that they invited her, because I know that it was good for her since she was in poor health. Thank God she got better. We saw little of Balthasar, my older brother. He had left home and was living with a friend, whose spinster aunts took care of both boys. They protected and pampered them as if they were all their own children. I was in my penultimate year of school when the priest sent for my mother to inform her that if Balthasar continued to miss classes, she would lose the year. They summoned her to the rector's office, where the priest showed her the excuses he had falsified to be absent from class. "Please have him come," Rosalinda asked him. As soon as the boy entered, the indignant mother showed him the fraudulent papers and, without a word, reprimanded him with a good slap. "I'm sorry, father," he excused himself later. Balthasar was smart, but he didn't want to study. My mother dreamed that one day he would go to college and become a professional to take care of us, and protect us when she was absent. Far from wanting to fulfill such an expectation, he preferred to work and be independent because besides, he had fallen in love. He had many friends with whom he played sports. When it wasn't soccer, it was tennis or water polo. He also loved to play pool in a hover next to El Lucerna, a tea room in Rancagua. My mother would go looking for him and pull him out. She didn't like him to go there because it was not the environment for a schoolboy. Although he always had conflicts with her, I regret that we did not share our time as teenagers because we lost our coexistence and never resumed it. Life took us down different paths, opening a great gulf between us. I remember that September 18, a day of fondas and parades. My mother, Bernardo, and I were at home. With my little brother, I had many things in common. We are both Leo, and we also had the same problems at school, since we never followed the teacher's instructions, nor did we bring homework or lessons to study. Before we left for our vacation, we took the test, and I turned them in blank. I couldn't answer a single question. I was already thinking about when, back to school, the teacher would bring the corrected test, sit down at her desk, and start calling. So-and-so got a 7. So-and-so got a 6.15. So-and-so another 7 until she named me. Maggie Valdez, a 1.5. And added, "What happened to you? You didn't answer anything." She always repeated the same thing and I died of embarrassment before the eyes of all my classmates. I thought, how stupid. Doesn't she know that I didn't understand what she taught me? Besides, I had my mind on other important things than memorizing the Punic Wars, the birth of Napoleon, and 1,000 things I heard at school that were of no use to me to earn a living. My attention hovered all the time on family conflicts that traveled my mind. Would I find my father drunk? Would my mother be bitter? I still can't understand how I was being passed up a grade. Today, I would have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, but then I was just considered a clumsy, lazy child. Chapter 20. New Challenges. After 3 decades, Joaquin is already a prestigious businessman, even having wood warehouses for sale in Santiago. And as he can't keep up with his business, he needs someone he can trust to take care of it. That is how he brings his brother Valentin from La Rioja, who is an accountant and skilled in finance. He installs him in República Street, a central area of the capital, where he buys an office building and houses with the profits from the sawmills. His brother quickly settles in Chile when he joins the Spanish Stadium, founded in 1950. There, he makes contact with important Chilean businessmen. Little by little, he becomes the main investor in all his brother's businesses, taking advantage of the situation and the kindly commissions he gave himself. Meanwhile, Joaquin stays in the countryside, away from these complex transactions, without glimpsing that he was losing his patrimony. As the years went by, Valentin was already a well-known man in the Santiago business community. Meanwhile, in the south, Joaquin's health deteriorates and his absence begins to affect the productivity of the sea mills. Emma lives comfortably in the central zone, dazzled by what Ralph has given her, quite oblivious to the fragility of the company and also very unconcerned about her father's estate. Joaquin continues to get worse, and there was no clinic or doctors in Santiago to give him a diagnosis. Even though Emma and Ralph took him in and accompanied him, the disease defeated him, ending his life at the age of 78. When Joaquin died, the family's lawyers, hired by Valentin, sold the land in his favor, unscrupulously appropriating his brother's patrimony, which belonged to his daughter. Emma, for her part, signs the inheritance documents without taking into consideration the magnitude of her father's fortune, administered by her uncle. For a few years, the hacienda is abandoned, just as Joaquin left it. In the summer of 1962, Ralph and Emma take their family on vacation to Temuco and stay at Pierre's Hotel, showing their children the rooms where they stayed years ago with their grandfather. everything is intact. It seems that time has stopped," Emma comments nostalgically as she recalls her childhood with her father, sitting in the large dining room, enjoying dinners and the comings and goings of the parishioners. She also remembers that this is the same place where she celebrated her wedding banquet. The next day, after touring the city, they head for the countryside, trying to contain their expectations about what they were going to find. Once they enter the farm, they discover to their sorrow that everything was abandoned. The large gate no longer looks the same, and only some of the letters where, in the past, the name of the hacienda was written remain. The house looks in ruins, as it has not been maintained since she left with Ralph. The garden is colorless, dry, and you can't even hear the birds singing. The bench where she waited for her father is rotten. Only a wood board is left on the iron structure. From among the trees appears a skinny dog and barks, and behind it, an old Mapuche man wearing flip-flops and shaggy clothes. Emma recognized him instantly. "It's Quiltral, my father's trusted employee. He's the one who took care of the corrals and stables," she exclaims, surprised to see him so disheveled. The man approaches, also recognizes her, and is moved, humbly greeting her. "Missy Amita." He can barely pronounce her name, grief-stricken that his house looks in this condition. She embraces him. When she asks him about everyone, he answers, "They left after the boss died. There is nothing left here, just me and the land. I live there," he adds, pointing to a hut from where the smoke comes out of the fire. She tells him that she's coming to see the field and that she will come back more often to visit him. Ralph pats him on the back and gives him some money, promising to return as soon as possible. Quiltral looks at his landlady and her children. He is happy to see them and recognizes little Jim, whom he saw at birth. He is now 13 years old and left the hacienda as a baby. He looks up at the boy and sees the big pine trees that his father illuminated with a caterpillar's headlight at his first Easter. The Mapuche says goodbye and walks away crestfallen. The family continues to trip to Villarrica. Ralph wants to stay at the Antumalal Hotel, where they spend their honeymoon with Emma. They will stay a couple of days to tour the gardens and enjoy the splendid view of the volcano. Emma wants to get home as soon as possible, her sweet home, so the next day they set off for home, taking deep emotions and memories with them. One afternoon, when Emma is in the garden cutting roses, Ralph, returning from work, approaches her and comments that he would like to retire in the country. "We could start by restoring our house and improving Quiltral house. Then, I will divide the field into pastures for raising animals and planting alfalfa to feed them." Emma is enthusiastic about her husband's project and responds, "I like the idea. For me, it will be a way to honor my father's memory." A few days later, Ralph put his dream into action by buying a van, which he uses to travel once a month. During those trips, he focuses on fixing up the house. He also hires people to make wine cellars and contacts some cattle ranchers in the area to guide him in the purchase of Hereford cattle and a beautiful German Clavel bull for abundant breeding. The farm begins to flourish again, and soon the fruits of his efforts will be seen. Jim is now a teenager and is happy to accompany his father on trips because he will be able to use the fishing and hunting gear he brought back from Michigan. Father and son spend great weekends together dove hunting and trout fishing in the pond. On the other hand, the country was already witnessing the profound political and agricultural changes that were to come. In 1965, President Eduardo Frei implemented the agrarian reform in different areas of the country, parceling out a total of 3.2 million hectares, expropriating them from their owners and handing them over to farming families. These are the beginnings of the Mapuche conflict, and Emma's farm is in the area most affected by taking lands. In May 1967, Jim returned 17 and is notified by the U.S. Embassy that he must report to serve in the army. Despite being accepted from the Vietnam draft, Jim wishes to return to his grandparents. His father agrees and suggests that he continue his studies in Michigan. One night, days before leaving, he meets with some friends to say goodbye. A couple of them are planning a trip to the Caribbean and invite him to join them for a few days. Jim, who was in no hurry and had no big plans, happily agreed. He planned to make that stopover to stay a few weeks enjoying the beaches of Puerto Rico before arriving in the harsh winter of the Northern Hemisphere.